Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today's potentially going to be a weird stream. I've just got a lot going on for the past few weeks, and uh, maybe it will get better in the next couple of weeks. But I potentially am going to have an appointment, but I don't know the time. So at any point I may have to just end this entire stream just very abruptly, so I'll warn at the beginning of that. Meanwhile, we do have a decent amount of news to go through, so we'll try and go through that fairly quickly. Also, the problem certainly comes down to just, do I want to sit around and wait for a phone call effectively for several hours and accomplish absolutely nothing, or do I want to try and make a pre-recorded footage and then end the pre-recorded footage in the middle of the phone call, which would be even worse in the long run. And yeah, streaming is the best move, certainly, because it's more freeform. Plus, if I was making pre-recorded footage of Prey, which is for the accountability section, what I have made more episodes of Prey, and but those episodes are getting to be 2 hours long. Plus, the last one was like 3 hours, so there's real inconsistency on the length there. You don't really feel like you're doing too much in Prey, so I guess they're doing a Power Pros app and Yu-Gi-Oh! Campaign that's underway. Participate in limited time missions to get commemorative icons and cards and celebrate the Power Pro app and Yu-Gi-Oh! Collab. This is definitely a collab to promote Power Pro. So much so that they have to say, Power Pros is a popular baseball game series released by Konami. Click here for details. Yeah, give me some more details. Okay. So it seems like to me, it's literally just going to be login challenges. Power Pro Lady Sisters. So instead of Harpy Lady Sisters, it's Power Pro Ladies. Although I don't even know if these anime girls are in Power Pros, because the art I've only ever seen for Power Pros was this little barely any shape circular chibi art style, but clearly these are some anime characters. What's funny here is you're getting these extra storyline here for what is a normal card, because it's not an effect card that needs to explain what it's doing. And this is doing the Magic the Gathering thing where you have My Little Pony style. That was one collab, certainly, with Magic the Gathering, was My Little Pony cards that totally would not connect visually and thematically with any of the other Magic the Gathering cards. Although, when you go down that route with Yu-Gi-Oh!, nothing visually is that connected thematically, or anyways, so this would look perfectly fine, and I think most people wouldn't even give this a second glance and would just assume this is Harpy Lady Sisters. It's just so close to that anyways, as far as just they redrew the same image, and it's the exact same card, I'm sure, same attack, same defense, same types, and all of that, same rarity. So yeah, you also have a digital element here, where if this is only available digitally, then you also aren't getting into the Magic the Gathering nonsense where they were selling cards for hundreds if not thousands of dollars, single cards. Power Pro Night Sisters, I assume would have just been Night Sisters again. This one feels a little bit more baseball-y and very possibly not exactly the same as the, I assume, Night Sisters card, what we should do in comparison is, see, I did a Duel live last night. We got a bunch of daily quests. We got a login bonus. Grab that. Should come over here to the deck and type in just sisters and see what we can find as far as how many sisters cards there are. Let's see. This includes things we don't have. So this is what Harpy Lady Sisters would be. Yeah, exact same card. Effects and everything. Different art though. Actually quite different art. Like that, this taking up a lot more space for the heads and focusing more on the top halves of the characters, where this being more zoomed out and allowing for more background. And then if this one is Power Pro Night Sisters, then there should be another card called Night Sisters, and it doesn't seem like that's the case. So there's no related cards interestingly connected to this. It is possible that it doesn't even synergize if you did have those two cards, so you couldn't probably play both of them. And it really is just two cards anyway, so like you really couldn't build a whole deck around that idea. Yeah. And there's just too many things with night in the name to possibly know which specific card they are copying here. Like I would have to I'd have to have a much better idea. Yeah, there's, I imagine people who are better at Yu-Gi-Oh would be able to figure that out better than me. So unfortunately I just really have to leave it there with that. Let's go ahead and open 10 bonus packs of the legacy cards. See what we get new. And not much. We have Wing Eagle is new. Stop Defense is new. I do recognize Stop Defense as a card, but it's not one that's really playable. None of these cards are playable. Maybe if you're trying to do an Exodia deck, you'd play Magic Mallet, but probably not even then. Yeah, so I've been playing Prey, and yeah, in 3 hours, it just doesn't really feel like you're doing that much. We're very close to getting 200 gems here, and then I could probably play off screen today in particular to kill some time. They introduced this idea, and I definitely have to wonder if the idea of a giant, really dangerous character called the Nightmare in Prey is something you're not supposed to run into until you're closer to halfway or more than halfway, maybe even 2/3 of the way done with the game, and yet you can trigger it by returning to areas after too many times, and that you really should only be in one area once and then follow the main story around. So I do suspect that what might happen is I might start moving the main story further ahead instead of trying to do side quests, and I may run into the nightmare more and more. But unlike the big daddies, the nightmare immediately starts like a 3-minute timer, and if you can just hide from it from 3 minutes, it will just disappear. It's such a bullet sponge. Otherwise, it's not really worth killing. I did kill it once, certainly, and after about the 3rd time it showed up, the game gave me a side mission to then make a signal that you could do to call it to you or send it away, and you can use that, it seems like 4 times. So if you were, I guess, just very flush in bullets, which I'm not, I'm still very much struggling with recycling resources just to have bullets. But yeah, if you just had all your guns really upgraded and you were flush with bullets and you wanted to fight it, you could do that. But defeating it seems to only really give you a slightly larger amount of resources, and it's really resources that would just lead to making more neuromods. And to make neuromods, you still need the mineral resources more than anything. And yeah, mineral resources, there's 4 currencies in Prey, and one of them is minerals, and it's the thing you're going to use the most for bullets. It's also the thing you're going to use for weapons upgrades, so you're going to have a trade-off there of, should I upgrade this weapon so it does more damage so it uses less bullets, or should I just make more bullets? And that's only if you're increasing the damage on the weapon, or perhaps the accuracy on the weapon. The game is a little obvious in the fact that it is more of an RPG dice roll that's happening when you shoot the enemies than just, oh, the reticle was on the character and thus you will do damage, because there is chances of critical hits. If you're in a sneak position and it hasn't recognized you, you 100% chance of a sneak attack. It all just kind of feels weird because it's not repetitive enough and you don't have enough bullets that you could do it as a grinding mechanic like you would in Skyrim, and it's definitely not anywhere as fast as, say, Bioshock. And I really just want to play Prey like Bioshock and wish there was a better mode that would give me more resources, but I'm playing on easy, and if I had to jump down to story mode just because I was running out of resources, that would be pretty pathetic. Outside of the nightmare, I really am just running around places and investigating things. I shouldn't have done that. So yeah, it's creating a slow experience where I went into the shuttle bay and just investigated all of the shuttle bay, and I'm now about to escape the shuttle bay after spending a lot of time in the well, the last episode I did, I started having just exited the neuromod area, which the returning to the Nori mod area, which is the starting area, triggered the nightmare from showing up, and there's just a lot of other mimics. It seems like the game scales fairly obviously based on just how upgraded you are, and will respawn mimics, but ironically will not respawn resources. So from day one, as soon as you start the game, it seems like that's close to all the resources you ever get in the entirety of the overworld, and you're just having to you really just need to, from that angle, be incredibly frugal about your resources. Very possibly the argument is to not even recycle anything until you've upgraded the amount of recycling materials you get, which that would be hard to do, certainly. I would question whether you really need to increase your health in the game for the first third of the game at all, or but there is something behind increasing your health, that first step, that is also very helpful. So it does make a decent amount of sense to get one of the upgrades that lets you extract the organs from killed typhons, because that gives you exotic material, and it has put me in a position where I really never need exotic material, and every indication out there is that you normally would struggle to find exotic material otherwise. So I just solved one of the currency problems of the game by getting one upgrade, but there doesn't seem to be a solution for getting bullets that way, other than just being able to upgrade your guns. And even upgrading your guns is weird, because you can individually upgrade the weapons, but you also have effect neuromod upgrades that will increase the amount of damage all guns do, or most guns do, at least. So, yeah. It doesn't feel like the system was tested quite well enough. Like, the system was somewhat thought out, I'll say, as far as just the balances of all the economies in the game, but I just don't think it was tested well enough to the point where people played it and would have given the feedback to say this is fun. If anything, it just feels like it would make a lot more sense for there to be humanoid zombie like characters running around way more often in the game, and like I haven't really seen any so far. I'm gonna go ahead and activate this just to stop potentially having a character do what it wants to do. Yep. But yeah, I've seen one brain controlled character, humanoid character, in the entire game behind glass, and it's not a threat. Whereas I've seen hundreds of corpses, it feels like, and it just feels like it would have made so much sense from the beginning of the game for the Typhon mimics to touch a human and then control them mentally and turn them into zombies that could shoot guns at you, and that would have that amount of... Well, that sucks. Like, if they had an amount of bullets on you, that would be very helpful. Certainly. And then that would balance things out a lot better. The turrets don't really balance things out, and the operators, which are just like flying robots, don't balance out that well. There's also a problem with spare parts, in which I ran into a situation where I needed a specific amount of spare parts to move the story forward. Otherwise I was going to have to completely leave the area and come back at a different time, and we really had to struggle to find enough spare parts to repair things because I had recycled so many spare parts otherwise. So I would say, first suggestion on praise, follow the main story, probably to a T, until it seems like it's pretty obvious that you're into the game, towards the end of the game. I probably haven't even followed the main story far enough. And keep at least 10 spare parts on you at all times, and don't bother repairing turrets for most cases too. Unless I can repair a turret and fortify a turret, which I haven't gotten to that level yet. Then, like, I've never seen a turret strong enough to kill more than one, maybe two of the lowest level mimics in the entire game. This deck is winning, but it is annoying how little of it actually can be implemented. Like, this can't work, this ability can't work, this ability can't work. I just am being lazy by not replacing half the strategy of the game. Storyline also, there's, I would say Prey is just a weaker story. It just doesn't have as much dialogue written for it in the first place. So, like, the Bioshock, you're constantly being talked to, and in Prey, you are left to your own devices for easily 10-20 minutes at a time. You're finding a lot of recorders that aren't directly communicating with you, so it's just pre-recorded footage towards some side quest, which isn't anything. So yeah, that's Prey. I really don't have that much to say around it. It's kind of a shame, and I guess that explains to me in part why Prey as a game got its praises, certainly when it first got launched, but definitely didn't feel like a game that was getting talked about a lot after the fact. Let's see. Somebody on the chat says, Kiro says, I feel sorry for being a lonely viewer. I'm not sure I fully understand what that means. Like, if you're saying you're the only person watching and you're sorry about that, don't feel sorry about that. I would say, hey, if I get one video view on these streams, that's more than anybody else I probably would talk to today. Like, so, and frankly, I'm getting somebody's attention when, even if I talked to 3 or 4 people today, they probably wouldn't really care too much about what I'm saying or pay attention. And that's not just me singing a sad story. That's most people. Like, if you're going to a job or if you're going to a school, you may be around hundreds of other people doesn't mean they care about you, doesn't mean they care about what you're saying, doesn't mean they're listening to what you're saying. And it doesn't mean you're, most in particular there, in a position where you can talk about what you care about. So when I'm streaming here, even though I'm a critic and fairly negative sometimes, I am talking about things I care about, talking about video games. If I try to talk about video games to most people, their eyes are just going to roll in the back of their head. Yes, I will say it would be lovely to have hundreds of viewers on these videos. It would be lovely to have more subscribers, certainly. But I'm definitely not doing this to try and become the next PewDiePie and get millions upon millions of viewers. It would be nice. It's unlikely it's ever going to happen. But ideally, I just want my channel to be somewhat successful that I could get a few $100s a week, potentially retire off of it, live off of it, while still doing what I'm enjoying, which is this. So I would be very happy at 1,000 to 10,000 subscribers and viewers per video. I don't need to blow up and become super popular, because that way leads to just exhausting yourself to make more content in a lot of cases, and it leads to somebody inevitably being upset with you and trying to cancel you eventually. Like, you look at these other YouTubers, this significant portion of them get cancel attempts at them. Yeah, and I just don't need that. Kiro says the pinnacle of humility. Yeah, I'm not trying to be super ego about it. It would be kind of pathetic for me to have a big ego with 590 subscribers to my channel. Even that is actually a lot more than I expected 10 years ago when I started my channel. I honestly started this channel as just like a video diary that maybe historians in the future might have some interest at looking at. And it definitely is a lot nicer, I would say, to play a video game and be able to talk about it and criticize it versus just playing a video game and sitting in silence, which is what I was doing before when I played video games. I have my entire childhood where I did that, where it's just like, alright, you're playing a video game and you're sitting in silence. I'm definitely not young enough to have experienced the situation where you could have been on voice chat, and I don't know if there ever was a situation where you could play video games and be on something like Skype or Discord and voice chat with your friends and actually talk at that point. So back playing Super Mario Brothers, unless you had a sibling sitting next to you or a parent playing with you sitting next to you, you were just playing the games in silence. And that set a foundation for having played a lot of video games and having a lot of experience to be able to criticize them now, certainly. But it is much nicer to play a game and criticize it. And arguably, I've played a lot more games than I probably would have as trying to do YouTube and talking about them, which has let me experience things and try things that I wouldn't really have been that motivated to do. Yeah, the only thing I can say as far as people, if they wanna try and help, just subscribe, click the notification bell when a video plays or is released on my channel. Let it play, even if you're not in the room. Just like let it play in the background. That's still a view. That's still a way to support. Even playing a video a second time through will help videos and help trick the algorithm or force the algorithm to potentially show my videos to other people. I do have a Patreon link, but it tends not to ever work, and mostly I'm more. It's more helpful to simply just friend me on Steam and gift me a game if you wanted to support that way. But as far as non-financial support, it's just getting more viewers, getting friends to subscribe to my channel, even if they don't actually watch my videos, can be very helpful too. Like, I would be much happier if, of the 500 people plus that have subscribed, if they could get one friend to also subscribe to my channel, then I would have that metric as far as having 1,000 subscribers done. Then it would just be a challenge to increase the amount of watch time, which my watch time right about now is about 800 watch hours or whatever, 800 units, and they want 4,000 units as far as watch time. So I would need to quadruple the amount of time people watch my videos, and double the number of subscribers. Then I could be in the YouTube Partner Program, and at that point I'd probably get maybe $100 anywhere from a month to 3 months. I wouldn't be surprised if the actual amount is lower than even I think it's going to be. Which are just like, alright, I can have a pizza party around that. Like, it's a nice little attaboy. It's not money that in the United States you can live off of, but it is something. It potentially looks like a business that's actually making profit instead of a hobby that's just incredibly expensive. $100 every couple of months would cover the $100 to $300 I spend during like a Steam summer sale and buying new games, so that would work too. I am just in a weird situation overall where there really isn't a lot of other things I can be doing at this time. Otherwise it would make a lot more sense to go flip burgers or go work at Walmart, but my life situation is just so weird at the moment, and has been for the past 10 years, that hasn't really been an option. Before we start the news, I also wanted to say, as I'm diving deeper into having a Tuya/Smart Life smart home, I got this Edupin. It's EDUPIN is the either company name or the name of the device. It's a smart wake up light. I had bought a different smart wake up light, and it just, yeah, like half of it wasn't programmed, translated to English as far as the settings, so it was still in Chinese. These are all cheap Chinese products, but some of them work perfectly fine. The Edupin is a Bluetooth speaker, although in fairness, that's probably the worst aspect of it, because the speaker is on the back, and then there's a hole in the center, and the whole light is curved almost like a horn. So you would have to have it backed up almost perfectly distanced from a wall so that the sound bounced off the wall, then through the center of the speaker that is actually where the hole is lower, and then through the horn for you to get a good amount of audio out of it. Otherwise it's just not loud enough for my tastes. But that's the secondary thing. It has an FM radio but not an AM radio, which is interesting, but okay. I don't know how much more expensive it really would have been to program in an AM radio chip or put in an AM radio antenna. Probably not that much. I imagine maybe AM is just not being used much in China, if it ever was used in China, where it's not used much in the United States otherwise, unless you want to listen to a lot of, like, usually it's ultra conservative talk radio on AM radio, and not music that you'd want to listen to, because the quality on and the distance on AM is pretty bad. I wouldn't be surprised if they cut the AM simply because the quality of the reception would have been low. But its main thing as an alarm clock is that it's programmable to do a sunrise and sunset aspect. And I will say, I programmed it to wake me up at 8 o'clock, and I woke up at almost exactly 8 o'clock this morning. And that was with no buzzing alarm at all. It just starts at a brightness and the color that looks like the sun at zero brightness about 10 minutes earlier. I think it's exactly 10 minutes earlier. It starts at like zero brightness all the way off, and then it slowly goes to 1%, 2%, 3%, all the way up to whatever your maximum percent is, and it starts off by default at 50%. And so just slowly, gradually simulates the aspect of the idea of the sun rising. And yeah, that's great. It does have a selection of sound machines / alarm clocks. Only one of them is really a DTD beeping annoying sound alarm. The rest of them are definitely more in line with a they are more in line with like sound machines, music machines that would lull you back to sleep more than they would actually wake you up. Like one of them is literally sleep, rest little baby, don't you, yeah, that song, that lullaby. So yeah, but yeah, you can trigger the lullabies and the music to play. It has a Bluetooth speaker in it. It has a radio in it. It has a sleep mode where you press a button and then it will slowly go from 100% brightness on the light down to the 0% light. So as you're going to sleep, you can press a button to start sleep mode. And since it is a smart integrated device, you can actually program sleep mode to start on a scheduled time, which that's the whole idea of this being a smart device, is you never have to set the clock, and you don't have to you can automate a lot of more things through the To Your Smart Life app if you can program it, which it's rough to figure out how to program it sometimes, and sometimes they don't give you enough options as to really program it well. But yeah, I am so far one day in much happier with this Eat Up In Smart Wake Up Light than I was with the one I got before. But the caveat with that is the one I got before was on sale for $33, and I nearly paid $60 for this other one. And it is frankly insane in 2023 to pay $60 for a radio alarm clock. Like, you can't understate that. Kiro, it's 30 seconds delayed, said, sorry, I'm a learner of the language. I do not receive everything. I want to share the conversation with you. Alright. All I can say to that is, whatever you post, I will try to respond to if it's relevant, but yeah, I can't really help you be a better understander of the English language. Like, not by much, at least. All anyone can try to do is communicate and be patient, I suppose. And I definitely can try to do that. Okay. I will say, as a content creator, that is one thing that terrifies me more, and I don't know why more content creators don't talk about this. I think most content creators are either like narcissists more than they want to admit anyways, but it does kind of terrify me, and I definitely have had cases in the past where you have 5 or 6 people trying to have a communication in the chat while you're also trying to do 2 or 3 things, in my case, while playing the game, and I just don't have the attention span to potentially follow the chat. And you definitely see that with any major successful content creators, that they are ignoring 99.9% of the chat and not even trying to see what people are saying. That's where the whole YouTube super chat feature comes from, where they're only reading comments that people are paying for. And then certainly when I'm playing Yu-Gi-Oh or any card game, there's a situation there where people immediately want to play me in Yu-Gi-Oh, and particularly there's just no reason why you should play anybody in Yu-Gi-Oh. You can't accomplish any of the daily quests with that, and Yu-Gi-Oh just takes way too long anyways, and then you constantly have these festivals like the one I'm playing now, so you can't accomplish the festival if you were playing people online. It was only a couple streams ago where somebody wanted to play me. I said on the chat that I don't play people, and that person either didn't hear me or chose to ignore me, and then proceeded to wait about 5 minutes or so. I would say wait a few minutes, I won't say a specific amount, and then they came back and tried to get me to play them again, and I just ignored them, and then they asked again, and then they asked again, and they asked again, and I just ignored them all the time, because I've been through this scenario multiple times where there's just not a positive outcome to telling somebody no a second time, like on YouTube. Like, people are going to get upset no matter what you say. So you respond the first time is the best response I've ever figured out, is just to say, no, I don't play anybody on YouTube. I don't on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel at the moment. If they change how the daily quests work, I definitely would consider it. Back when Hearthstone allowed you to get daily quests, I would do it more then, when I was playing Hearthstone many years ago at this point. But if I became a bigger content creator, as soon as one person asked me to play Yu-Gi-Oh, if there was even 20 people on the stream, 20 active people that wanted to play me, that would be basically impossible. I would have to put people into like a lottery system. And the best ways to interact with viewers is definitely something I haven't figured out, and I don't know if any YouTuber has figured out, and it is something that scares me more than anything. Like, I definitely would not be happy around the idea of going to like a convention or something and doing a huge Q&A panel with even 100 people in the audience. That kind of interaction is just something I have no experience with, and I would have to learn really fast. Kiro says he's from Saudi Arabia. I'll just read out his post there with no comment really. But I just want to make sure I read it out so he knows I did see it. So yeah, he's not a English first speaker. Alright, let's go through the news at this point. Right after I streamed on Wednesday, the Shinji Mikami of Tango announced that he is leaving Tango Gameworks. Here is a retweet from Gamatsu of him in English. Thank you for all who have supported Tango so far. I'm leaving Tango, but the young people have grown up well. Please continue to support the games that Tango releases in the future. Which is a very magnanimous Japanese thing to say. Doesn't feel like there's any subtext here from this. This could have been something they asked him to tweet and they carefully scripted it. I wouldn't be surprised if Shinji Mikami does not speak any English at all and had someone else write this for us. Even at that, you see he says young people, and from an outside perspective, I see foreigners, Westerners taking offense from that, but that's exactly the experience as far as how I understood what was going on at Tango Gameworks in the first place. Shinji Mikami is roughly credited, and I would say roughly credited, for making Resident Evil 1. I think Resident Evil 1. I could be wrong about this. He may have been the person who made who's roughly credited for being the person who made Resident Evil 2, or even 3, or even 4. It might be 4, too. It doesn't really matter, because inherently in video game development, the real people, it's always a team effort, and his story and ideas in either 1 or 4 alone did not make either one of those games the games they are exclusively. And you definitely saw that when The Evil Within got made. Which, as far as Tango Gameworks, or they're just calling it Tango, maybe they dropped the Gameworks name and renamed themselves. He made The Evil Within 1, but the problem with The Evil Within 1 story in particular, which is where Shinji Mikami would have been involved as the director, is that it jumps all over the place. It is just, let's make this weird psychological anthology series where one level is in a hospital, another level is in a creepy village. A lot of these ideas basically stolen from Resident Evil 4, which he's just was copying it. And I wouldn't say the Evil Within 1 was an awful game. It's totally worth playing once, but it didn't do anything amazing. And then Shinji Mikami didn't even really care that much about The Evil Within 2. He let a subsidiary take the reins. And that seems to have been his entire involvement with Tango Gameworks. I'm not sure he did anything else. He may be a lot older, but he doesn't actually look that old. I know Japanese people tend not to look very old, but he kind of looks like he's in his 30s and 40s, and he kind of feels like he is just interested in doing something completely different, and really did not have a lot of interest in that. Now we could speculate further and say, well, Tango Gameworks, I believe, may have been owned by Bethesda, and so when Microsoft acquired Bethesda, then it became a slightly different situation. I don't know how much more of a different situation it really would have been, though, because it doesn't seem like Microsoft cares to actually run or change how the businesses are being run. But yeah, it definitely just seems like even before Microsoft acquired Bethesda that he was struggling to perhaps find ideas or struggling to perhaps just care about the games he made, or about making more games. I think more it's about making more games. Yeah. Let's see if we go to his full Twitter here. Let's see what he was talking about previously. As far, we'll have to do this just by pictures because I can't read the Japanese. Here we have what looks like a nice meal. I don't know if you would call that a bento box. Here we have some Japanese rice, I would assume. Here we have a fancy watch. Let's see. Destroying that card is not going to stop them from destroying that. Let's see, February 4th, here we have another meal. These do look like nice meals, but they don't even look particularly that fancy. So he's just like February 3rd, talking about meals, watches. Here's a nice picture of just a Japanese street. Let's see. Here's a picture of a coworker. Like, I think this is him. And so you can see he does look younger, but this also was taken 12 years ago, so I mean, he might be approaching his 50s or 60s. Did Tango Gameworks just release Hi-Fi Rush? Yes. And so that's what they were talking about. Meanwhile, this guy just managed to kill me while I wasn't even paying attention. Oh well, that's how it goes, I guess, as far as Yu-Gi-Oh! Just keep on playing. So yeah, I really question how much of an influence he would have had around Hi-Fi Rush. He may have had some ideas or thoughts. He may have not had any influence at all, and maybe that's in part where he why he left. Although I wouldn't be surprised if he from the beginning of the development of Hi-Fi Rush wasn't going to be very involved, and they just asked him to stay until the game was launched. But yeah, noticeably looking at his Twitter feed here, he's more interested in showing off his foods. His meals, frankly, come off very basic. I wonder if this is being delivered in his cafeteria. Like, here you have a more Western breakfast, which, yeah, that's weird for a Japanese person. There's no rice, there's no fish for breakfast at all, sausages and ketchup on your eggs, or some other kind of red sauce on your eggs. Yep. If anything, I would say he needs, if he's going to take these meals, he needs more green in his diet and more spices in his diets, because some of these meals, while they look nice and clean and minimalist, are like not particularly that interesting. Here, this looks more decorated as far as a meal. Of course, I'm a video game critic, so why am I criticizing his food photos? It's almost like a teenage girl too. There's a picture of a Gundam. He must have gone and visited the life-size Gundam that they have on display in Japan. Doesn't work as far as anyone knows. Yeah, I'm going back to like December, and there's nothing here about video games that he's posting. He just doesn't care about it, as far as I feel. My personal opinion from somebody who doesn't know him, from somebody who only has seen him a little bit on the internet, it doesn't seem like that was his true passion. So, yeah. Him leaving Tango Gameworks potentially does not affect much. So I've spent a lot of time to say, well, him leaving Tango Gameworks probably won't change much of anything at all. I almost assume that there will be some effort by Tango to make a Evil Within 3 or a spiritual successor to Evil Within, something that is going to be a Resident Evil from Microsoft compared to a Resident Evil from Capcom or Konami, which I think it's Capcom that makes Resident Evil. Yeah. Microsoft in general does not have a lot of horror games to release, so it fills a niche. That being said, the success of Hi-Fi Rush may have Tango Gameworks making more small games outside of the horror genre also. And if anything, we may just see Tango Gameworks expand and develop more games than just one every 5 years or so. The next thing is there was this DICE Awards run by the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences, and they gave an award to this guy. Let's see if we can get more into the details here. Here it is. Double Fine, Tim of Legend, Tim Schafer, with the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Hall of Fame Award, which I assume is something like a Lifetime Achievement Award, but you don't want to call it a Lifetime Achievement Award because that would mean he's old and he's unlikely to do anything more with his career. Which, in all fairness, he is old, and I would say there isn't too much more he is going to do with his career. He is the boss. Tim Schafer is the boss of Double Fine, but he's not, I think, really pitching any ideas for games at this point. I could see Tim Schafer being promoted throughout being a Microsoft subsidiary now. I could see him being promoted to a higher management position where he gets even further disconnected from making video games. And or him just retiring overall. Particularly around the COVID pandemic, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of older people who, for the first time, started to think about just retiring and slowing down. Having that mental pause of a couple of years during the first outbreak of COVID, I think should have led a lot more people to think about retiring, although it really didn't seem to do it that much for management and highly motivated, successful people. It definitely did it for a lot of people who were working go nowhere jobs and realizing that their job didn't really matter that much to them. At the core of it, Tim Schafer, much like Shinji Mikami, and this is almost a parallel of two old game developers, one from the West and one from the East. Both of them famous and in positions of management because they made a good game many years ago. Tim Schafer being credited for Full Throttle when he was working at LucasArts, and that's, I think, pretty much the only game he's really known for having major influence on. Like, he succeeded quite a bit with Full Throttle, and then LucasArts split off at some point, or he split from LucasArts at some point and formed Double Fine, and then by that point he was more the boss and the owner of the company when Brutal Legend was made and Psychonauts was made, and so I just wouldn't really consider him the creative lead in the development of those games, and maybe I'm being unfair with that, but that would be my assumption. At a certain point, it is kind of insanely ridiculous to expect any creative person to do even more than one successful piece of art, or even one successful piece of art. Artists are described as starving artists for a reason, and most artists are not appreciated at all until they are incredibly overhyped after their death by art collectors or by fans of their art that tend to be rich aristocrats. So it is kind of ridiculous that so much of the game industry tries to promote this idea that there are genius peoples like Cliff Bleszinski is an example of that, who can just make good game after good game after good game when the evidence really doesn't line up with that at all. Most people make one, maybe two good games in their entire career. It takes so incredibly long to make a video game anyways that it's no surprise that you would only make one or two successful games. Double Fine as a company has had maybe 4 or 5 successful games over a very long amount of time. Sorry, I was checking my phone there for a second. So yeah. But yeah, I guess you say congratulations to him, this guy, Tim of Legend. What is his real name? I think it's Tim Schafer, but I can't remember for certain. I would also say that he is the kind of person, I think, that probably promotes himself a little bit too much and gets too many of those awards for his own good. Whereas there are definitely a lot of other creative people who actively avoid trying to get these kinds of awards. There's a lot more people in the video game industry that deserve to receive awards and recognition for their work than there are people that actually get it. I don't know if this is an actual article, news article, or more of a investigative journalism piece, might be how you describe it, from GameDeveloper.com, exploring the evolving Japanese indie game scene, rise of Dojin Soft, which that's an old company importing indie development culture Better Together, Lost in Translation. This is one of these like really long articles the game developer never does when they're actually talking about news. But I guess check out gamedeveloper.com if you want to read that article. I probably won't have time for it. The indie development scene is growing, but there definitely is a case where the culture in Japan is very much against the idea of working as an independent person instead of working in the almost 100% union jobs that exist in Japan for Japanese big corporations that for the rest of your life. The unions in Japan, I think, pretty much guarantee you'll maintain your job unless you are driven to quit, which is what they often try to do, is just drive people crazy so they'll quit. But it doesn't guarantee shorter hours or better pay or better benefits, really. The things you kind of would like to see the unions happen for. And the Japanese are culturally too much of a workaholic to actually go on strike or even want to retire before they hit 65 or older. Let's see. The Scum VM emulator is, I guess, looking for testers for an Android build, which is interesting because the Scum VM emulator is mostly to play point-and-click adventure games, and it's questionable what kind of experience you really could have looking at most of those games on an Android phone. You'd need a really big screen, and you would probably want to play with a mouse, a wireless mouse attached, I would say, than trying to use a touchscreen. I guess if you're playing on a tablet, it would work well, but it is kind of an interesting choice. Speaking of an interesting choice, Harvester Games is the handle. Rim Mikulski is the creator of Downfall, The Cat Lady, and Lorelei, and he put out this tweet and this art. I say we better go hug people we love until it's too late. Seriously, go hug someone now. Which is an odd statement. Not a statement I disagree with at any point, but just kind of an odd statement overall for somebody who is known for making horror. Like they're not even point and click games. They're mouseless keyboard games more than anything. At least the Cat Lady is. Maybe Lorelei had controller support. I'd have to kind of remember. I think Downfall was all keyboard too. This creator is kind of known, in my opinion, for being a really good storyteller and a pretty bad game developer as far as making a game experience with the controls they have. They play fine and they're mostly bug free. I don't think I saw a single bug in the whole game because it's so simplistic. So he's telling an interactive story much more than he is making an interactive video game experience, which helps tell the story better in that case. I can only assume that somebody important to him had something horrible happen to them, like they died. And that's why he's putting out these pictures. Or maybe this happened a while ago these are characters from the cat lady. I think this character here is the cat lady, and this is her friend. This is Lorelei, and this literally may not even be a main character in Lorelei if I am recalling correctly. I'm not sure I am, though. And he's promoting this other game, Loretta, which doesn't have anything to do with him, but the names sound similar. The art style is a little different, but yeah, Loretta does look interesting, and it's yet another game I've missed. So I'll put that on the wish list. I follow the creator specifically of the cat lady just because I really enjoyed the cat lady as a game. We can't activate our ability anymore, so we're just going to have to attack. Alright, let's just not continue our main phase then. Let's go ahead and activate the spell. That way we just have nothing in our hand. And then end the turn because we're going to lose. And I think this probably needs to be the last game for today because, yeah, I'm still, like, at any point the stream may have to end. Censored Gaming, since I've started following them more on Twitter, has put out some more stuff. Apparently, according to, it looks like a Reddit thing, Russia has recently expanded its 2013 gay propaganda law, which is to say it bans speech and content about non-traditional sexual relationships so that it now affects all age groups. Previously, it was sold as a law to protect children. That fallacy of protecting the children is always used when you push censorship, is that we've got to protect the children. I don't know specifically why that's a main focus at the moment for Russia, but whatever. And at a certain point, I think it's only fair to say that while the law may have been heavily pushed by Putin, it did in part have to be made by the rest of Russia's government. And I definitely think that from what I've heard, the anti-gay sentiment is fairly high in Russia overall. Like, you're going to hit at least 50% of all citizens potentially agreeing with these laws. But yeah, because of that, The Sims 4 My Wedding Stories is not going to be released in Russia. Because I guess they don't want to bother to release it. The Sims has been an example of pushing the ability to have gay relationships if you want so. Also, Hogwarts Legacy has run into issues that with the changes to the Russian law, with it having to remove LGBT references in the dialogue, which there aren't even that many in Hogwarts Legacy from what I've, otherwise more people would have been talking about it, I would assume. Let's see. And then the other article from Censored Gaming here is that people want to bust up Apple and Google. Japan is now in the same group of countries that are saying this oligopoly with Apple having a locked-in Play Store and App Store, and Google having a mostly locked-in Google Play Store. They want to break that up. I don't know if there's any other stories here that we really need to cover. No. At a certain point, I may need to just start talking about everything Censored Gaming talks about. Because his tweets are somewhat interesting, and in all fairness, censorship needs to be mentioned and pointed out a lot more than it does. Let's see. Go ahead and claim all these real fast. Alright, so where we are at is login for the next couple days. It seems like you just have to log in 3 times in the next 64 days. Or find a way to fusion summon, link summon, or pendulum summon in the next 4 days, which could probably be done just by playing a little bit of ranked. We've got 46 days until this runs out, which probably by this time next week I'll be at grade 100. Seems like they've changed it from level to grade. Yep. So the only thing is you potentially want to just keep playing, get 1 victory, and I'd get 2 more legacy packs, keep playing all the way up to 1100 to get the title. Title's not that important, but potentially getting a few more legacy packs would be nice. Like, titles really just don't mean anything at all. Right. Let's now start to really go through all the news as quickly as possible. But yeah, I'm still having major trouble with the way Firefox decides to organize its thumbnails, in that you can click incredibly slowly on the arrows, but unless you put a good 1.5 seconds between each click, it will eventually just decide you want to go all the way to the beginning and skip all the other tabs, which is not what I want to do. I want to just go to the point I was at. Like, potentially the solution here would be to open a different window and have the tabs in its own separate window, and then switch windows each time. Then that would leave me potentially over the course of a week with 3 or 4 different windows open, which isn't really that big of a deal. So that probably is the right move. Is stop trying to have everything in one main window. Seriously. Let's click that first. You know what? Let's just go backwards then. We'll just do this backwards. My macro wasn't working anyways, so I potentially have some fall list stuff. Let me turn on the sensor blur, make sure that works. Here, blur, unblurred, good. So we have some fall list cleanup we'll do to start with, and then we'll do gamedeveloper.com, and then we'll work backwards in chunks as far as other things. Codename Nemesis here came out August 12th of 2022, and it's just not relevant, so we can leave the follow list. Codename Romantic, either I make an exception here. It's a half visual novel. wrapped around science fiction, it says. I guess I probably thought that this would be more of a programming game. But I don't think it really is a programming game. I think this is probably just a misnomer. Art style is coming off as a fairly rough pencil sketch thing. Yeah, I think I would say no to this. Like, if I am going to cover visual novels, they need to be the cream of the crop. Cocktail Rush, is this an adult game? It's English, Russian language. 10 positive, came out in November. I'll give this one more time. Let's see, Coin Operated Carnage has not that many reviews. I'll give this more time. I'm probably not going to make a lot of decisions today, I think. That's what's going to happen. This one's mostly positive, has 75%, has over 30 reviews, came out in January. I think that's probably good enough to make it to the wish list. What I'm doing here, I probably should explain every stream, is I curate this follow list with games on Steam or I follow them, and click this button to follow them. And then I wait until it has at least 30 reviews and they are mostly positive. Usually I want it over 75%. And then I reevaluate at that point to see if other players, other gamers, your average gamer on Steam who is willing to review the game, which is not really your average gamer on Steam at all because most people don't review games. But yeah, for the reviews, if they are getting positive reviews, then that tells me there's more relevancy to the game. More people care about it, more people know about it. And then if that is the case, I'll put it on the wish list instead of removing it from the follow list, which is the other option. If it's after a while, I check back and find that it's not being reviewed positively, or after a while, if nobody had played this. Basically 6 months. If a game has been out 6 months and it doesn't have 30 reviews, it's not a relevant game. If it's been out 6 months and it's reviewed negatively, it's not a relevant game. If it's been out any amount of time and it's getting a lot of negative reviews, it's not worth it. So in this case, it would be relevant enough. Although I was leaning more to saying no for some reason. I don't know. I was just thinking I was going to say no to this one. This is also an alphabetical list, so we are going through the letter C's. And these pages are all opened by a macro program. All my news pages are, which has automated a lot of things, but the coding is rough and does not work because it's interacting with website pages which don't always load at the same speed or load all the content correctly. This game is a great example of something that is not really that relevant, and I could give it more time because it hasn't been 6 months. So I might consider that, but then you just look at this game and it is just a Sokoban box puzzle, box pushing game, and it doesn't look like much of anything, so I could just remove it from the follow list. The general idea here is to get rid of as many things from the follow list that shouldn't be raised to a point of being on the wish list. Anything on my wish list I consider a game good enough that I actually would consider buying and playing, not that I inherently would actually buy and play everything on the wish list. It also is from the point where I ask people if they want to support me financially to friend me on Steam and look at my wish list, pick a game they want me to potentially cover at some point in the distant future, more than likely because I'm slow, or just pick a game they want to gift me because they thought that would be a nice game. So yeah, that is another option. Is people can do that. You can also just gift cards on Steam, but that's harder. You have to actually search gift cards on Steam to find out they even exist. Moving on, we have a GameDeveloper.com article, which is funny because like the tabs are jumping all around when I click the middle mouse button, because I have an extension to also close pages whenever I click the middle mouse button, so I don't have to scroll all the way up with the mouse cursor every time. Saves me a lot of moving my wrist around. But apparently Valve used a honeypot to catch and permanently ban 40,000 cheaters in Dota. The company said the latest wave of bans was particularly large. So, what was the honeypot in particular? They put out, it says, we've released a patch as soon as we understood the method that these cheaters were using. The patch created a honeypot, a section of data inside the game client that would never be read during normal gameplay, but that could be read by using the exploits. Interesting. Each of the accounts banned today read from the secret area in the client, giving us extremely high confidence that every ban was well deserved, which I have to really applaud that, because it does definitely feel like a lot of video game companies just ban people on the flimsiest of reasons or the flimsiest of evidence. As somebody who is traditionally educated in programming, I wonder if they mean they created a point in RAM or reference to a point in RAM, and they were watching who potentially would look at that point in the RAM, or if they were creating a specific file that was not going to be touched by the client and watching who was looking at the file. I'd assume it's probably closer to a point in RAM than a file, but it might be an API call too, or a function call in the program. It's really hard in these kinds of stories to even think about siding with the cheaters. So yeah, and if Dota is going to be a game that people want to play, most players don't want the cheaters around. One of the games I'm playing is getting flooded with fake account bots, and it's becoming a much worse experience because of it, and I wish that they would fix that. Let's see, Ghost Ship Games has invested in the Figment developer Bedtime Digital Games, which, okay, I do think I have heard of Figment as a game and Ghost Ship Games, so it's two fairly, I guess maybe you'd call them medium-sized companies, maybe closer to even small companies investing in each other. The Behavior Interactive has bought the UK co-development studio Sock Monkey. The deal makes the Dead by Daylight developers' first acquisition in Europe. So yeah, Dead by Daylight potentially getting some more support to make their next game. I didn't even know there was a Dead by Daylight 5 out. I thought Dead by Daylight was more of a live service game. Maybe this is season 5 of Dead by Daylight. That would make more sense. Yeah, the news comes as Behavior prepares to launch its next major franchise, Meet Your Maker, on April 4th. Okay. The legendary game designers John Romero and Mabel Adis were honored at the GDCA 2023. Mabel Adis was posthumously received the Pioneer Award, which honors breakthrough business, tech, and game design milestones. The award-winning game designer, level designer, and programmer John Romero will receive the Lifetime Achievement Award for his work on the iconic and genre-defining first-person shooters. This, I assume, is John Romero. This, I assume, is Mabel. I don't know who Mabel Adis is, though. She is the first female game designer, and she's passed away. That's posthumous. That's what that means. Mabel Adis is recognized as the first female game designer, but that title alone does not convey the breadth of her pioneer work. As the lead designer in 1964's The Sumerian game, she helped pave the way for game elements that wouldn't become mainstream. For decades, among the innovations she helped conceive were game updates, in-game narrative experiences, and early iterations of what would become known as cutscenes, which in 1964 took the form of photo slideshows accompanied by synchronized audio. The Sumerian game itself predates modern display technology and instead used a computer printer to express dialogue and prompts. Interesting, which took the form of in-game narration and narrator and character who conveyed game information and asked questions of the player. Interesting. She is definitely first generation old school working. I have heard of the Sumerian, but I don't think I've ever actually seen it played. I've heard of the word Sumerian. I may not have even heard of the Sumerian game. And then John Romero worked on created Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, and Quake. So his name is fairly recognizable. There is definitely a weird difference in these two photos here. You have John Romero with this long flowing hair looking kind of like a punk rocker guy in a leather jacket, and then you have Mabel in curly hair and just what looks like a sundress, if I was to guess, and definitely full color black and white. What is the GDCA would be the bigger question, though. Game Developers Choice Awards. Yep. So it does seem like we're getting into like an award season at this point, where they're giving out lifetime achievement awards and things like that for old people who are potentially leaving the industry, or like right now a lot of people in tech in general, including video games, are getting laid off. So this might be the time to have an award season and give out awards to people to put some positive news out against all the layoff news. They don't have any real announcements for new games, and even new games that are coming out are having a hard time being well received. Even Atomic Heart, which is the biggest thing as far as a game that's being talked about this week, is having a hard time convincing people to enjoy it, because there's people that don't like it because of its Russian ties. There are people that don't like it because it's not particularly well designed in its story, not particularly well designed in its smoothness of how it actually plays either. So there's definitely a general consensus that Atomic Heart has a lot of problems, and I can only hope is that it would be patched or improved upon later on. by the time I got around to playing it in a couple of years. Speaking of another game here from GameDeveloper.com, Deathloop has looped in 5 million players, which that is a pathetically low amount of players considering who published this game and how long this game has been out. This was put out by Arcane in 2021. It was a PlayStation and PC exclusive. I can't help but assume that it came out to other things. Yeah, came out again in September of 2022 for Xbox Series X and PlayStation Plus extra tier streaming or monthly service. Inherently, and this is kind of a problem I think I'm seeing with Prey also, is there's too much of an open world aspect, I think, to Deathloop, and it doesn't give you a tight linear experience like you'd get in Bioshock 1. So that's why I don't think it worked particularly well, or was received particularly well. Generally, though, I think Deathloop just wasn't really that good of a game when people actually played it, nor was it advertised particularly well. Having a story and narrative around the idea that you start over and over again, and it's a roguelike game where you're expected to die and then start all over again, and you have to do a very challenging combination of actions to win. I just don't think that was very appealing to people. And yeah, 5 million, I mean, that's a big number. Certainly if I could get 5 million viewers, I'd take that any day. But for video games, it's not really a big number, particularly when you consider it's been released and then re-released. Yeah, and even when Deathloop was being launched, it felt like the Arcane was focusing on the wrong things and going in the wrong direction. Moving on, DICE has formed a new team for the next Battlefield single-player campaign, according to GameDeveloper.com. Check out that article if you're interested. I'm not really that interested in Battlefield. And then Valve has unveiled Steam's full sales and festival list for 2023, which, if anything, just really goes to show that they don't really care if you know the dates. They've let these dates leak in the past, or people have leaked these dates in the past, and it just doesn't matter too much. If anything, this makes a great system in which you can know that the spring sale is happening between March 16th and 23rd, and they're even telling you that's the major seasonal sale, so that would be the time to buy in the next season video games. And they'll probably have some trading cards or some kind of profile icon that they give away around that, whereas the Mystery Fest and the Puzzle Fest and Sports Fest probably won't have any kind of trading cards or anything like that. Next Fest, same thing. And then the summer sales tend to be the biggest one to focus on annually, and that's June 29th through July 13th. If there's only one time per year you're going to buy games on Steam, the summer sale is probably your best bet. If not, it would be the winter sale, December 21st through January 4th. Particularly the additional details to come around the return to Steam Scream Fest, the Halloween festival, might be something you would want to focus on, or even the Autumn Festival. What happens at the end of the year in particular is you just have too many sales at that point. Too many Christmas sales, Black Fridays, Prime Day sales. And if you're buying more than just video games, you can really break your budget before you get to December 21st or even November 21st with Prime Day sales or Black Friday sales, Cyber Monday sales. But you really don't know what will be on sale or if there will be any special gimmick as far as what they're going for. They are pushing Next Fests twice a year. And then the rest of these festivals are focusing on specific genres of games. I imagine it wouldn't make a lot of sense to have an adult fest where it was just adult games. Because, yeah, Valve and Steam aren't fully committed at all to selling adult games on their storefront. They do it, but they're inconsistent and not interested really in it. But yeah, if you need the dates, if you need to put them in your calendar, they're available to you. And then I think this might be our last game developer article saying Elden Ring and God of War swept the DICE Awards, which is feels like we've talked about 3 different awards now. There's a whole list here of DICE Awards. The only game not listed in the outstanding category was the outstanding achievement for independent games, going to Tunic. And then there's a few other Game of the Year awards here going to other games. Action Game of the Year, Vampire Smiles. Racing Game, Gran Turismo 7. Sports Game, Ollie Ollie World. Strategy and Simulation, Dwarf Fortress. Family Game, Mario and Rabbids, Sparks of Hope. Fighting Game, Multiversus, which I don't even think too many people are playing that. The Mobile Game of the Year, Marvel Snap, which that probably was an easy decision. Meanwhile, all the outstanding achievements are going to Elden Ring, and Game of the Year goes to Elden Ring, or the outstanding achievements are going to God of War Ragnarok. Which Santa Monica Studio, I think, is a third-party developer, or even like second-party developer for Sony. And Elden Ring probably sold more than anything on PlayStation. So very PlayStation heavy focus as far as all of these outstanding things. I definitely think there is room for a rethink of what kind of awards they're giving out, though. If you're giving out just as many outstanding achievement awards as far as Game of the Year awards, you're not highlighting enough games. You're not listing any runner-ups at all for any of these, for the way this is being listed. There may have been runner-ups on the actual website, but I don't know if I specifically can grasp the difference between outstanding achievements in game design versus game direction, and I don't know if there is enough of a difference that there should be 2 different awards and then a Game of the Year award. But I'll leave it at that. So now I'm back to the fall list cleanup, and this is just all over the place. Cobra Kai 2, Dojo's Rising. This came out in November and it's 42% positive, which looks like a shame, but it's, I guess, not probably that surprising that a low effort streaming TV tie-in is bad. Cobots came out in 2021 but has only 13 reviews, so it's not particularly relevant. It's 100% positive, so I could potentially make exceptions, and I do make exceptions, but I feel like this is probably a cooperative game. It's a single player cooperative game in that you control one character and then rewind time, and then the next character does what you did. And it's doing that in a 3D environment when really this should probably be a top-down perspective game. I probably have other games that does the same gimmick better, so I'm going to say no to that. Now, inherently, just because a game is irrelevant and has very few people who have played it and reviewed it doesn't mean that I would not play it. It just really severely limits the odds that I would play it, because I do inherently want to play diamond and rough games that people haven't found before. If anything, me making the automated YouTube shorts that I'm making and putting on my channel has really highlighted that there is a taste for looking at new games in diamond and rough games people haven't seen before. There is definitely some people, I've had like 3 or 4 people comment on the shorts just saying no, which the title says check out this new Steam game or check out this new PC game or something like that. And so there have been a couple people who have just said no, or that looks like garbage. But yeah, overall, by the number of views alone, people are somewhat interested to stick with the minute-long shorts. This game, though, I don't think has quite enough to offer for me to stick with it. And it came out in September, so I'm gonna say remove that from the fall list. Clunky Hero. Oh, I also need to make sure the games are not in early access, because I don't want to play in a game that's in early access, nor do I want something on my wish list that's in early access and may be in early access for 10 years down the line, which has been several games. CLT. Is this an adult game? Like, interesting. This game is intended to be non-erotic. The Rorschach motif is not a coincidence, like its trailer, which contains no explicit sexual content. The game contains nothing but extract images and subsidiary. So, this is a Rorschach tests collection of, well, I think mostly female genitalia art, clitoris as being depicted or somewhat depicted, but it's not being really sold as what it is. The number of reviews, though, are extremely low at 10 user reviews, and the quality of the reviews is not very high at 70% positive. Looking at the actual game, it just doesn't feel like it's anything. It's trying to sell on sex without actually delivering on sex, which arguably the game would be better if it had been an adult game. So I'm gonna have to say no to that, and particularly, like, as far as showing the clitoris, you're not even really showing it, and a lot of times you're doing more art abstract. Well, I guess maybe you are, depending on how zoomed in you are. I guess that could be the clitoris there. Yeah. So we'll say no to that. There are definitely better adult games out there if you want to focus on that, or even female body positivity art probably shouldn't be done in a video game form if you're going to do that anyways. It does let me use one of my favorite words that's not very known, yonic, Y-O-N-I-C, which is when a shape is vaguely similar to female genitalia. It is the opposite or the partner word of phallic when a shape is similar to male genitalia. Cloud Cutter is a shoot 'em up game. I don't know if I really want to play shoot 'em up games. 84% positive and widescreen out of early access, particularly for shoot 'em up games. Usually they tend not to be widescreen compatible. So I'll put this on the wish list. Now, going through the fall list cleanup is the least important thing to cover, and that's why it usually is the last thing. This one's mixed, so we'll get rid of that. It is much more important to cover the new games that have come out and cover the news. This climbing challenge castle. I don't think I can say yes to this game. Its reviews are low and it's not very relevant either. But there is definitely a future in which you could make a Jump King type game in 3D where you're climbing a castle. But it would need a lot better visuals than this and getting rid of the exclamation points, I think. And at a certain point I don't know if it's actually that entertaining to constantly climb. Here's a coin pusher game from December 28th. One more fall list cleanup game. I'm gonna give this more time. I am looking for a coin pusher game that's good, but really I'm only looking for like one. This might be the one I'm looking for, so I'm going to put this on the wish list because it is positively received. Of course, you have to be careful about a game like this not really having much to it or having microtransactions and actually trying to have that same gameplay aspects that you would have in the real world with a coin pusher. The whole idea would definitely be more of a case that you would want to play these kinds of games probably on a mobile phone, honestly, but even if you play them on PC, you would want to play them for free and you'd want it to feel like a better experience than playing a coin pusher game in the real world. We have something that looks like it might be an adult game. Fighting blood and implied murder. So, nope, it's just kind of weird 3D animation, which sometimes it doesn't look too terrible, but sometimes it looks kind of bad. Looks like it's a visual novel, and by that standard it's too low. Plus it's irrelevant anyways. Coldage, interestingly, has no reviews. I'm gonna give this more time. Today is really not a good day to spend a lot of extra time going through games. Cold Sun, we'll give more time to. Collection of Saga Final Fantasy games. Well, this is a weird game in particular because I probably would not want to play these Final Fantasy Legend games, which were probably on the Game Boy. But it's relevant enough, so I'd put it on the wish list. There is always this fictional thought that at some point I may just go through all the games I actually want to play, and then I'm going to start playing really old games that are not that interesting to me, or Game Boy games. I know there's a big fandom of playing Game Boy games, people nostalgic for that, but I am definitely not one of those people who are nostalgic for playing black and white grayscale type games. But yeah, I'll put it on the wish list. That's probably a prime example of a game I'd put on the wish list, but I really wouldn't ever try to play. This game has been in early access since 2020, which it looks kind of like Hearthstone, but yeah, online peak today was 6 people, so playing a collectible card game with in-app purchases when there's only 6 people online is not doable. I have a plug-in from SteamDB that tells me how many people have been playing, and see its all-time peak has been less than 100 people. So this is a great example of where 199 user reviews is actually fairly deceptive if we're to believe SteamDB, because it's at its all-time peak barely had 200 people playing, which is far, far too few people. And that's going to be the problem with most collectible card games that are either on my wish list or follow list, is that we are hitting a level where those kinds of games only succeed if it's a game being made by a massive company that that is advertising and promoting the game quite a bit. Now I'm trying to scroll because I really need to get to this point, because I need to be on the left side of the tabs, otherwise my middle mouse button is going to close the tab, and then I would just always move to the right side. So if I'm at the right corner of the line, I can't move forward. So I found the Video Games Chronicle news articles, which is where we usually start. Let's start doing that. Let's see. New Xbox Game Pass titles have been dated. Includes Atomic Heart, Wulong Fallen Dynasty, Soul Hackers 2, F21, and Margin Blade. Unfortunately, it is also worth mentioning that my programming for Video Games Chronicles is still very broken, and so most of these news stories are old stories we talked about in the last stream. So I'm just going to close all of these without even making comment as far as the headlines are going, because we've talked about all of this stuff. Let's see. Oh, I'm trying to remember if we've talked about these things. Yeah. In comparison to the 5 million copies of Deathloop that have sold, Elden Ring has sold 20 million copies, which is comparing a very, very successful popular game that's been out for about, I'd say, 6 months to a year, to a very unpopular game that's been out for, I would say, at least 1 year, if not 2 or 3. So hard to get the exact apples to apples comparison there. Let's see. Yep. Talked about all this. Yeah, here's the story we started with, Shinji Mikami leaving Tango Gameworks. And see if this is what he looks like now, and this isn't an old picture. Looks pretty young there. Twitter also really being bad about letting you quote them. So, Issue has published the following statement on its Twitter account, : No tweet here. Let's see. Bethesda said, quote, "We wish Mikami-san well in the future and are excited by what lies ahead for the talented developers at Tango." So yeah. There are definitely a lot worse ways to leave a Japanese company if you do leave a Japanese company, which most Japanese people don't. But certainly these big personalities and known names in the game development world in Japanese companies are more willing to leave companies and go start their own than I would have expected. But in comparison, there could have been accusations of insider trading, which has happened to several people over the past year or two in Japanese companies. And then there's people involved in game companies who got caught with drugs, and that was a big no-no. I don't think you probably would lose your job for just marijuana, but I think the voice actor was caught with like cocaine, and that was a big no. They definitely take drugs very seriously in most Asian countries. Enough to ruin somebody's entire career. You could also have been thrown out and ignored, like Konami tended to do, or publicly ridiculed, like Square Enix tends to do. So to leave on good terms on a Japanese company is almost the exception. Warner Brothers, I don't know why they're just calling it Warner, is very pleased with Hogwarts Legacy launch and the spectacular player engagement. The publisher says over 267 million hours have been played. I do think that is that for this stream. Unfortunately, that's gonna be it. I'm gonna end now. Somebody's ringing my doorbell. Sorry.